Hello, welcome to VGC Off The Record. My name is Stephen McInerney. Not really, it's me, Andy. Stephen's not around today, so I'm going to have to kind of wing it this week. And hopefully this time next week I'll be hosting all of these Man City videos and raking in that sweet YouTube cash rather than our horrible display advertising old media cash, which is nowhere near as good as... I've seen his car. It's you don't even want to know how big his house is. But yes, joining me today is Chris Scullion. Say hello, Chris.
Hello. How are things?
Another Chris, Dring, Christopher Dring. What is your job title these days? Businessman.
Yeah, I tell people I'm head of games industry.biz, but my technical job title is head of games B2B. But I don't like telling people that because it's
business journalist. That's good enough for everyone listening, I imagine. So if you're tuning in for the first time, we talk about video games news, which we write on our website. This is not about the virtual Pokemon card game, which also shares some sort of acronym, I understand. Neither is it about the VGC construction group, which are very poorly fighting us for SEO space. Get good, guys. Get good. So yeah, let's talk about some games news, shall we? Otherwise, we're just going to be waffling on.
When I used to work at MCV in Australia, there is a gay sort of Times type magazine called the Melbourne Community Voice, and a lot of people used to confuse us with that, which was
when we were on CVG, I think CVG.com was a Venezuelan mining company that allegedly had mafia ties. Allegedly. So that is why we definitely never went for that domain.
But you remember also when we were on CVG, there was another site that called itself CVG. And like a really small site, and then went to E3 and started putting CVG stickers.
You've reminded me of, like, you've made me angry now.
Went to E3 and started putting CVG best of show stickers. It was some guy
who just like made a blog that he just called CVG. But by that point, Games. I think he definitely sensed that we were going to get closed down, and he started muscling in. Like he ramped it up to 100 as soon as he sensed that we were going to get closed. And do you remember the big developers have put up pictures of all their E3 awards? Like CD projects and stuff.
He went to E3 and put CVG best of show stickers on all the on.
I'm
the
really sure
sites.
that the lead developers of Halo complained about how crappy our E3 award looks.
Yeah, and
it wasn't us. It was this guy. It's like a bit of paper that he'd word arted.
But did we not get somebody like Gav Murphy to go around and take them all down? Take them down. I'm sure we got someone to go and take them down.
Allegedly. Moving on. Our first story of the day is Jim Ryan, that popular man, that popular executive, who this week is saying that PlayStation has been quietly investing in PS5 exclusives. So this is a Nikkei interview, which has been translated by some site called VGC, the construction group, I'm imagining. Good SEO for them. It says, Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan has claimed PS5 will be home to more exclusive games than any previous PlayStation console. Speaking to Nikkei, the exec said the company had been quietly investing in the creation of first-party software and that it could pursue further merger and acquisition opportunities. The exact quote is, we've been quietly but steadily investing in high-quality games for PlayStation, and we will make sure that the PS5 generation will have more dedicated software than ever before. We've repeatedly engaged in mergers and acquisitions, including Insomniac Games. We will not rule out that option in the future. What have you got to say about this, Chris? I mean, obviously, it's a bit of a no-brainer that they're obviously investing in first-party software. But should this be any sort of indication that they're doing anything more than usual or less than usual?
Which Chris?
Sorry, there's two Chris's. So I'm looking at you thinking, well, I'm looking at you, mate. So, Dringo.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, the thing is, I really like Jim Ryan, just doing it on the record. PlayStation has sort of been doing this for a whole generation. It's had a bit of, at the moment, a lot of people are talking about the fact it's closed some studios, like Sony, it's cut them back. But a lot of the studios it's closed were making games for things they don't really make games for anymore. So like Sony Japan and Gorilla Cambridge and all those people made VR and games, and things like Ben's studio did a lot of Vita titles and stuff. And they don't need those games anymore. What they need are big PS4 titles, and so they sort of realigned them a little bit. But and we've got Shuei now running out there getting a load of exclusive or semi-exclusive, because I guess they're on PC, indie games to sort of fill the hole left behind by games like Rain and stuff like that. They're being made now by the people who did Bug Snacks or Bridge of Spirits or whatever the name of that game is, and those sort of things. So, I mean, Sony's always gone quite big on first party this whole generation. Last month, they signed Jade Raymond's new game. They actually invested in the studio, so they probably have a stake in that team now. I think in the old days, we used to call them second party studios, which what everyone used to refer to as rare back in the days. They've invested in Jade Raymond's studio. They've just yesterday announced a deal with Firewalk. And Firewalk's actually quite a big deal. If you look at the names look at the people who are actually working at that team, there's a lot of the senior people who worked on Destiny is making that new PlayStation game. So that's probably what they're doing. That's not as headline grabbing as we've bought Bethesda.
That came as a surprise to me, actually, that deal, because it surprised me that they were investing in a multiplayer title, because that seems to tread on the feet of a lot of their third-party partners, right?
Yeah, same, because that's the first question I asked. What's the last big multiplayer
game PlayStation did?
Warhawk.
Can anyone remember a big
SOCOM or whatever?
Mag.
Destruction All Stars.
Remember Mag? Was that a PS3?
Mag. Yeah, that was. I was going to say Mag. Like they say Mag and SOCOM and.
I get Killzone. I guess it's they have definitely. They don't. This is not their area. Like Xbox does this, and it makes sense for the department of people that do it rather than continue trying to do it themselves. What they're good at is making those sort of narrative single player games. That's what they've mastered. That's their 10 out of 10 expertise. So it makes sense for them to find studios and work with them. But when I started asking about this, they started going down. We don't know what this multiplayer game is. I mean, Sackboy, A Big Adventure, is a multiplayer game. So I'm not quite sure what level it is. I mean, we all sit there and look at their, it's Call of Duty, it's Battle, it's BioShock, it's Apex Legends, it's Destiny developers. So you think, oh, I bet I know what sort of game I'm going to get. But maybe we're off base here. I don't really know. It's a multiplayer game, but that can mean anything, right? It could be Outriders type thing.
And what's the feeling about what their first party lineup's looking like so far this year, Chris? I mean, it feels a little bit quiet, but then that's a typical first year for any console, right? Or do you think that perhaps we're seeing the pandemic kind of impact on what could be this year for them?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying recently that this year is the year that you'll really see the kind of
that was Phil Spencer.
Yeah, that's it. And so in any console kind of launch, the first few months are quite quiet. But I would imagine, just purely because of what's been going on, I would imagine that will extend to quite a few months further down the line. I mean, obviously you've still got stuff like Returnal, you've got Ratchet and Clank coming soon, so it's not like this is completely barren. But it certainly is. It certainly seems to be that 2021 as a whole maybe a relatively quiet year in terms of exclusives. When they're saying that they're kind of quietly sorting out these exclusives, I wonder if there's a perception thing. Should they maybe be loudly acquiring them? Because Microsoft are kind of getting a lot of headlines just now for all this stuff.
Should we read too much into that perhaps if their first party pipeline is kind of lagging behind a bit as Microsoft's is, they might want to be filling the gaps somewhat?
You know what? In terms of like quantity, maybe?
I mean, I don't. From what I can see, to clarify, I mean, I think they've got a pretty strong lineup this year if it makes it. I'm talking about perhaps what you can't see.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. So I look at. It's interesting in terms of like block, because I'm such a retail journalist. I always look at games by scale. Right, I sit there and think. Right, I did a tweet the other day about how PlayStation dominated last year, and loads of people then sent me a list of Microsoft games that came out last year. I went, well, I wasn't talking about Minecraft Dungeons. I wasn't talking about. I wasn't talking about those sort of games. I was talking about the sort of blockbusters that retailers go to town on, and you get midnight launches for. Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, of that level. Not a single thing Microsoft did last year of that level. But Nintendo only did one themselves, in Animal Crossing, really. And whereas this year. you still got. I mean, Ratchet and Clank and Returnal aren't super big, but what was the noise? But the things like there's so I don't know. I look at some of the guys that got God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff coming up, and it's and Horizon, whatever it's called, Forbidden West and stuff like that coming up. It's quite sizable stuff. So in Gran Turismo, that's coming out in the next 6 months as well. So it looks like in terms of like big names. Sorry, I'm being distracted by noise in the background. In terms of big names, there was
that's subtle for shut up.
Well, no, I've actually interrupted my wife's working area because my working area clearly wasn't working, so it's my fault. I've interrupted her. But anyway, sorry. There's lots of big blockbusters coming out for PlayStation, and I actually look at that and I look at their lineup and I compare it to everyone else's, and it's probably the strongest. Which I know is not saying much because
I was going to say. I mean, it continually baffles me that Xbox is not, pumping out these big first-party titles that you allude to, the midnight launch caliber games. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how they've now got 20-plus first-party studios, but they're definitely not releasing any games. I mean, it does baffle me that and I think Xbox Series X is a fantastic console. I'm absolutely loving it. But it does baffle me that for a company that essentially gave up on its previous hardware about 4 years ago, we're now 6 months into a new console and there's no software. And I know the answer is going to be that, well, they're not thinking of it as a hardware cycle and, they're not worried about that and blah, blah, blah. But still, why are they not releasing any games now? Like, where are they?
Were you not at the midnight launch for the Medium?
Midnight soon.
I know what you mean. I mean, and it seems that those games are coming as well. You've got obviously got Fable coming, but God knows when. I mean, it's certainly not this year.
Someone told me that it's coming out on the next Xbox.
I'm not. No, don't do that. I've had. The internet's come after me. And I said, just be clear, when I said next Xbox, I didn't mean next generation. No. I'm right, Andy. I think the thing is buying studios and getting them to actually deliver on sort of, there's a process. Like if you remember when Microsoft bought Rare, I'd take us back to an era we all remember. The first game Rare released was a GameCube game. And then the second one they released was sort of an old GameCube game they managed to port across, and they had to do very quickly and cut out the multiplayer for, which was Grabbed by the Ghoulies.
Grabbed by the Ghoulies, yeah.
And then they did a Conker's Bad Fur Day port. And it wasn't until the launch of the 360, which admittedly wasn't too far later, but it was the launch of the 360 when Rare actually turned up and started delivering something for Microsoft. This takes a while. They've just bought Bethesda. Bethesda's first two games are PlayStation exclusives, right? These games and the games like Wasteland and stuff, they were multi-platform. They did, some of them are kickstarted games that are on multiple consoles. They're not really getting going on Xbox. We're almost this beginning of the generation is almost not. I'm interested. I looked at the sales figures recently about for Europe and PlayStation are bossing it. Right, they're absolutely 100 miles in the lead. Now it's Europe. Europe's always been PlayStation's stronghold, and it's worth taking that into account. But this is stock levels, right? I'm looking at stock because Xbox is sold out everywhere and PlayStation sold out everywhere. So it's whoever can get the most stock into the market. And at the moment, it's PlayStation. So I do wonder if Xbox sort of know that their moment isn't now. But at least as a console, they've got Game Pass that's doing really well, and that's probably their focus. But their moment is a little way into the future. It does feel weird they weren't ready, seeing as they didn't have 110 million people to keep happy on their platform. But I guess
while we're on the subject of first party games, we might as well skip ahead a little bit. And Chris, you've been playing Returnal this week, right? I know there's only a little bit you can talk about. Yeah. So how is it? The reception I've seen online has been glowing. It's made me quite excited to check it out, to be honest.
Yeah, it's fantastic so far. The preview embargo only lets you talk about up to like the first two bosses, which is just as well because I've not passed the second boss yet. It's so difficult, but it's meant to be. It's a weird kind of third person bullet hell kind of roguelike Metroid Prime style. It's got a million different types of games.
See, one of those puts me off and one of those makes me excited.
It's roguelike putting me off.
It looks like a very cinematic Metroid Prime style narrative game.
Is it roguelike?
Yeah, that looks really good. But then it's like, and it's bloody hard, bullet hell, die all the time.
But it's not.
Right,
but to be fair, I hate overly. I'm not a big fan of like Dark Souls games and stuff like that because I generally tend to prefer to just get on with it and get through the game. But something about this one, I think it's because it's so fast. It's so fast paced that I don't mind it so much. That she runs.
It looks more like Doom to me.
Yeah, the combat feels like Doom because it's so fast. You're jumping all over the place and loads of enemies. So it's really action packed. But as you go along, you get it's roguelike in a sense in that you get different you get different weapons with different stats every time you do a playthrough, and then when you die, you're sent right back to the start. And the world's procedurally generated, but not completely. It's every room is a preset room, and it basically just shuffles them about every time you start. So when you go through the door at the start, it might be a different room that you're not used to, but you know the layout. So it's this kind of halfway point between. It's procedurally generated, but there's been at least some design work going into designing each room, so it's not just totally random nonsense. So it feels well designed, but it's just really enjoyable. I was saying to you earlier that the triggers, the adaptive triggers, it's the first time I've played a game and thought actually this is really useful. Instead of just being a cool effect like it has been before, it actually feels useful this time because they put the resistance in halfway down the trigger. So you hold L2 to do like a close aim, but it locks halfway down and kind of sticks, and that's your close aim. And then if you press it further, it clicks, and then you've got like an alternate fire. So it basically turns the PS5 triggers into GameCube triggers, which is like awesome. I was like, oh wait a minute, they've added an extra button here, basically out of nowhere with the resistance, and that's genius. So far, yeah, I'm really good. I'm curious to see if it gets repetitive as it goes along, because there's a lot of keep going further, die, keep going further, die, keep going further, die, and I wonder if by the time I get to the end of the game I'm going to be a bit sick of that, but so far I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But yeah.
I'm excited, actually. I mean, I was quite pleased that they delayed Deathloop in a way, because I thought Deathloop and Returnal, one of those games might find an audience. I don't think both of them will.
Yeah.
Not if they're out at the same time. I know Resident Evil's in the middle of them, which is their biggest problem. But the fact that they pushed Deathloop back probably gives Returnal a chance to find an audience. This is my commercial brain, but I also quite like the look of it in the last state of play. I actually thought,
This is especially because both Deathloop and it are about dying and replaying the same thing over and over again. Like it would have been two similar games kind of near each other. It would have been a bit tricky, but I kind of hadn't been paying much attention to it. Probably my own fault. I'd looked at it and thought this looks quite cool, but in my brain I was expecting another medium type game, like a kind of slow pace. But it's the complete opposite of what I thought, because I just wasn't paying attention. It's like extremely, like the sprint is the fastest sprint I've played in a game for years. It's just once you know where you're going back to, you can just go.
That's
just
like
the fastest sprint in a game. VGC. But yeah, no, it's excellent. It's really, it looks the part as well, and the loading times are just like obviously instant. There's a lot of teleporting. There's a lot of kind of Metroidvania type stuff. Obviously, every time you die, you lose all your loot and your gear, but there's some permanent upgrades that you keep. So eventually, like early on, you find you unlock a sword that can be used to hack through certain doors, and one door hides the boss. So once you die, you can come back and just open that door.
I'm going to check that out. It sounds good,
awesome.
And I bet I play it for 30 minutes and get annoyed.
No, I think you'll get in it. I think it's only the boss so far has been really difficult. Everything else up to that point is difficult but manageable, because it's kind of, the controls are really responsive. It feels almost like a kind of bullet hell shoot 'em up, but not.
And I can already hear the Twitter comments of. Same old games journalist doesn't want to play a hard game. The reason why a lot of games journalists don't want to play hard games is because we've been playing every game for 20 years. And if you buy like 4 or 5 games a year, perhaps playing some challenging gameplay might be a bit more entertaining than if you've seen it so many times before.
Especially because we have deadlines, and we're like, look, see if a game's 6 hours, brilliant. We're massively selfish.
I don't know if you get this. I mean, you I think you play a lot more games generally than me, but certainly it got to the point for me where it was like something had to be like quite special to grab my attention anyway. Just the amount of games I was playing, like in the kind of peak of like magazine days, I guess. Or maybe that's just me. I mean, I like linear games anyway, right? Yeah. Like. For me, it's like I want this game to entertain me. That's why I've kind of like got out of sandbox games a bit as well. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to have to find the fun. You bring the fun to me.
I think I'm just at the stage. Oh, sorry, go, Chris.
I was going to say, I think it's because we're old.
Yeah, exactly what I was about to say.
Exactly what I'm alluding to. That is exactly what I'm alluding to. Shall we just touch on another story? Because this is pretty much a similar topic, but I think we should mention it. Is the PlayStation Plus Video Pass that they're trialing in Poland, which is quite interesting. So this is some imagery that popped up on PlayStation.com. That again, the VGC Construction Group, what a great company, they broke it, and they eventually announced that it was a service limited to Poland. So it's a collection of around 20 movie and television shows from Sony Pictures that is being rolled into PS Plus subscriptions in Poland, and Sony Interactive Entertainment's Global Services Vice President Nick Maguire did an interview with the site Spider's Web and basically explained that they chose Poland for very specific reasons, data reasons, and they're basically testing the service, and after which there are no guarantees that it becomes a real thing or to other markets. But it's quite an interesting suggestion that they could be looking to perhaps add some more value to their subscriptions, Chris Dring.
No, yeah, it was because one of the we all talk about sort of console sales, and there's a lot of people on the internet get obsessed with it. But the reality is, which of these two Xbox or PlayStation is going to come out on top depends on actually strategic decisions. So, in 3 years, is everyone going to be subscribing to video games? In which case, Microsoft's in the strongest position. Or are we all still going to be using the console 100 million buying occasional games model? In which case, PlayStation's in the strongest position. One reason why I say that is because a subscription service needs content in it all the time, constant content. And that's why Microsoft are buying all of these studios and they've got all these different games. PlayStation don't need constant content into PS5 from themselves. They've got Grand Theft Auto and a Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed to plug the gaps when they're not doing stuff. With Game Pass and Xbox, third parties aren't putting their new games into it because it doesn't make business sense. They're giving them legacy games, but not the new games. So Microsoft need to supply the new games themselves, hence their acquisition strategy. If PlayStation decide to go down the route of really boosting up PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus and going after that business, that subscriptions business, they're doing okay, but actually going for Microsoft, they're going to have to find lots of content. And they make lots of games themselves. They're not going to make them in quite, they don't have quite as many studios or quite as much content being developed as Xbox at the minute. Coming out, sure, but in the future. And when I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, Sony has all this movie and TV content. And they've also got, and I thought, well, that's interesting. Because that for me was just, that's a string to their bow that actually we sometimes forget the wider Sony organization, in that they can put in a Venom or what's the name of that Vin Diesel movie? I've forgotten, it's Bloodshot or whatever.
And they've just signed a deal with Netflix though in the US.
Yeah.
So I think all of their content for the foreseeable is going to end up on Netflix at some point.
Yeah, but they've also signed a deal with Disney Plus, which I thought was which I don't quite get. But yeah, I'm assuming with Spider-Man and stuff, it's all a bit. But I don't know. It just made me realize that if PlayStation really needed to twist and go hard, I know that you broke a story, I think, Andy, where they were talking about readying up a competitor to Game Pass. This is the sort of thing they can do, which Xbox can't so easily do. Is go, we've got other content from other places that we can put into this service, which could be a selling point. Like I subscribe to Amazon Prime, but that's not because I actually want to watch loads of Prime instant video. They've got some video. It's not as good as Netflix, but I do it because obviously I get the delivery service is a lot quicker and things like that. So it's interesting because people come into services for different reasons. They might stay for a different reason than when they came in for. And I just thought it was interesting. I don't know, maybe it won't work out. It's just a test. It's just in Poland, but I just thought it was interesting. It was a realization.
I'm not convinced by it. I just don't. I don't get it. Like I appreciate it's an extra bonus and there's nothing. It's not like this is a drastic new direction they're taking or anything like that. But it's just I I don't get it. I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of people who would subscribe to PlayStation Plus or PlayStation Now and not already have a Netflix subscription or an Amazon subscription or even a Now TV or an HBO Max or a Hulu subscription or Disney Plus or any of the 4 million other. It's not like this is providing something wildly unique that people are going to think, oh, wait a minute, movies as well? That sounds great.
I'm not convinced it will drag people in. I'm pretty sure people want to subscribe to PlayStation Now. They're doing it for Uncharted or whatever.
Yeah,
they're doing it for what PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus, whatever, which one it is whatever it offers. It'll be for that. It'll be for that exclusive stuff that Sony does. It's about what keeps you there. And I think that's the thing that we it's not always the same thing. Like I came into Netflix for Stranger Things and I stayed for all the other reasons.
Yeah.
And that's the business model with that's the thing with subscriptions is that people can drop off. You know, once you buy a console, you own a console. And then they can re-speak to you at any other point. But as soon as if you subscribe and you subscribed for Forza and then you thought actually I'm not interested in the rest, then you unsubscribe. And that's why this is such a hard model. It can be really lucrative, but it requires constant content, constant stuff.
It's going to
let's move away from Sony, shall we? We're done with Sony, Chris. No more PlayStation talk.
Fine.
So the probably the biggest story this week, arguably, is the departure of Blizzard game director Jeff Kaplan, who is leaving the company after 19 years. In a very, very brief statement, anonymously brief, arguably, on Blizzard's website, he said, "It was a true honour of lifetime to have the opportunity to create worlds and heroes for such a passionate audience. I want to express my deep appreciation to everyone at Blizzard who has supported our games, game teams, and our players." So this guy is the face of Overwatch, one of the most charismatic developers, arguably, that there are today, and obviously clearly a veteran of the company. This is a little bit concerning for me. I mean, I'm a big fan of Overwatch. I love playing Overwatch, but I mean, obviously, there's been huge changes at Blizzard over the kind of the recent years, as kind of Activision kind of gets a little bit more hands-on with their dealings. I mean, obviously they've spoken publicly a few times about how they want to release more games, and it just seems to me that the culture is changing there, in a way that doesn't really meld with their old kind of garage shop style. I mean, Overwatch 2 in particular never really sat with me as a Blizzard style project. You know, they're just, sticking a number on it and releasing another one, and especially because it seems that they've dropped all support, meaningful support, for the original game.
Does that, as someone who doesn't play Overwatch, then does that concern you about Overwatch 2?
No, I think Overwatch 2 looks great, but it concerns me that someone like Jeff Kaplan is leaving. I mean, he's been he's not the only senior departure at Blizzard in recent years, right? Like, I'm a little bit concerned as an outsider looking in that, perhaps the magic's going to get lost there.
Yeah, I mean, these things can go. Businesses change. Activision as an organisation, the publishing organisation, has gone through a bit of a rough time. They've basically got one game now, right, in Call of Duty, and a couple of legacy titles that they remake.
I mean, I was told recently that pretty much every Activision studio is now working on Call of Duty. Yeah,
well, and that's what Activision is, Call of Duty. Whereas once upon a time they had multiple. They had Guitar Hero was $1 billion franchise. Skylanders was $1 billion franchise. Destiny, I don't know if it ever got to $1 billion, but it was definitely the aim for that. And they had these super franchises, and now they've got one. And meanwhile, Blizzard has quite a lot of big IP and a lot of big franchises that are worth investing in. And you can understand why Activision is going, right, we need to make more out of this lot because we don't have. It's an it's interesting how boring Activision's become. As successful as they are and how big they are. There was I remember back in showing my age, back in the days of going to Activision of summer events and going from playing a Bakugan game and a DJ Hero and a Wolfenstein and just like going and here's Treyarch with 6 different games, and it was always I always quite liked the fact that I had this eclectic lineup. Most of them were rubbish and nobody bought them, but it was always quite fun. And now they've got this one game. I'm not much of a Blizzard fan, so it's that difficult thing where I can't say, like, I have seen companies that go through massive transitions, management changes, and we're seeing it with BioWare to a degree. Where those studios seem to lose the magic, they struggle for a new identity. But as long as they don't but they find it eventually, because the people who work at Blizzard, the people who are making the game, even if they're not the original Blizzard people, they're working there because they love Blizzard. They like those games. They've come to work there, and as long as they keep making good games, these strategic behind the scenes grumbles and changes and issues, they'll find a new culture and a new thing. I hope they do. We've also seen plenty of times where that gets ripped apart and gutted.
I mean, we know the people at companies change, right? I mean, there are a lot of companies out there that are just a badge now compared to what we remember. So if there's anything that can be consistent, it is a culture and a way of doing things. And that is ultimately my concern here, is that in Activision's defence, I mean, it's been more than a decade they've been together, and they pretty much, let Blizzard seemingly get on with it until recently. That is my concern, that just their way of doing things is finally being upended a little bit. I mean, we've seen a lot of kind of reports come from, Jason Schreier and other reporters about, the demand for them to create more content. And when it seems like they were one of those companies that the reason that they put out such fantastic stuff that took ages was because they were allowed to fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sad.
Well,
on that sad tone.
Well,
let's all go away.
The thing is, you can. If Activision is saying we need you to do more, and they're saying, to do more we need more, and they go, well, here's Vicarious Visions to make a game for you, and Vicarious Visions just made one of the best games of last year. That's not a bad position to be.
But the thing is, you've hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, like, game development, it's not entirely. I mean, obviously, the old cliches. It's like making a movie whilst building the camera, right? So some element of game development is science, but that bit, like conceptualizing a game, and they call it finding the fun, it isn't a problem that you can solve by throwing people at it. It isn't. And Vicarious Visions have taken a classic game and HD'd it up. That almost is a science, right? It's a completely different problem to solve that I don't think throwing people at is going to really necessarily lead anywhere any faster than if they'd just let them be. But that's just me sulking.
It's nearly the weekend, don't worry.
Okay, let's move on to the next story. And guess what? It's about Sony. So this week they made a very welcome decision of U-turning on their previous announcement. They were going to close the PlayStation 3 and PS Vita digital game stores. Jim Ryan kind of published a statement on the PlayStation website this week, saying, upon further reflection, it's clear that we made the wrong decision here. So today I'm happy to say we'll be keeping the PlayStation Store operational on PS3 and PS Vita devices, but the PSP commerce functionality will retire on July 2 as planned. Chris, welcome Backtrack. Chris Scullion.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's good to see. The only thing I'll say is, like, until when? Because it seems that if they've made this decision, they're not going to suddenly go, okay, let's indefinitely keep it open. I wonder if in a year or two's time, I wonder if at this exact moment Sony's kind of been feeling the heat a bit for a number of kind of questionable decisions, and I wonder if they're going to maybe wait now until they're maybe kind of back in people's good books again before they try this again.
But Dringo, from one of the biggest takeaways I took from this, that it was nice to see that they were, gauging the reaction from the community, which was fairly unanimously negative about this, and kind of doing something about it. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and the problem is, when these digital stores were created, I don't think they there wasn't much future proofing done, right? They weren't sitting there thinking, oh, hang on, we need to manage this store for the end of time because we need to be able to make these games accessible. And I think that's the situation we're in now, where everyone's now creating this sort of, what Xbox is doing, and Xbox is leading the way on, but others are doing it, where you can play these games. I remember having all these XCOM games when I was a kid and trying to plug them into my new Windows PC, and they didn't work anymore. And I realized that I had no way of playing these old games anymore without downloading illegal software. It has always been a thing, but I think it's something that we all have to be aware of, particularly going forward. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I'm hoping the reason why PlayStation delayed it is they need to find a solution to save these games. They need to find a way of making these games playable on their modern devices, whether it's through PlayStation Now. That was part of the reason behind PlayStation Now, was the idea that you could go backwards and play the games from yesteryear on your modern devices. But then this is the company where, we're all dreading the next PT, right? But it's good news.
Speaking of which, according to a man called Christopher Scullion, there are 35 PSP games that are going to disappear as part of the store closure on that platform that is going ahead. That includes Ape Quest, which is an Ape Escape cool RPG spin-off, Loco Roco, Midnight Carnival, Super Stardust, Portal, and a few others. But it's not quite clear how this is going, because what was the description they used that I
PSP
said earlier? PSP commerce. So are you still going to be able to get these on Vita, or because I understand you can buy PSP games on Vita, right? Have I got that right?
That's right, but also from what I can also understand that the PSP store has been gone for a couple of years now. Like for a while now, you've not been able to open, kind of turn on your PSP, go to the PlayStation Store and just download something. Like the store just comes up with a message saying go to PlayStation.com to buy stuff, and they took down the PSP and PS3 website stores a month or two ago. So as far as I'm aware,
everyone's complaining
PSP
for nothing.
Commercial functionality has been gone for a while, so I don't know what they're removing if that's the case, other than seemingly the ability to buy them through the Vita. The whole thing's just a mess. I wish they would just kind of say it in English what is going on.
I'm one of the 14. I'm one of the 14 people that bought a PSP Go.
So it's your stuff. Yeah. Assuming you still play it on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
on that note, I think that's all we have time for this week. It's a shorter show than usual, but that's because my word writing brain can't handle as much video as Stephen McInerney. So he'll be back next week for a longer extended show when he fires up his webcam from his giant YouTube mansion. Thank you, Chris for being here to chat briefly about some Sony dominated news stories. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.